We're supposed to be speaking about Chinuch and the similarities between Chinuch and Kiruv and Chinuch. That's the official title of the talk. Now, I would expect that anybody who goes to any sort of talk or any sort of anything in life would like to know the credentials of the person. You go to a doctor, you want to find out that he's what qualifies him a pilot. We fail to ask, but we should. In general, your teachers, your children's teachers, right? That'd be a really good question to ask. But we always like to know what qualifies a person. So my qualifications are that, and I'll tell you exactly what they are. And to speak about Chinuch, about 15 years ago, I got a call from Hamodia to start writing a Chinuch column. So I was very flattered. I said to the lady, "Well, I don't write." She said, "Just write the way you speak." So I said, "Okay, it's much easier on the hand for sure." And okay, I got off the phone. I said to my wife, "Wow, I got a call from Hamodia to start writing about Chinuch." So my wife said to me, "What qualifies you to write about Chinuch?" So I said to her, "Yeah, but they're paying." She said, "Go for it." Okay, that was qualification number one. One of the biggest qualifications in the world. That was qualification number one. Qualification number two, is that one night I came home from, I don't remember what it was. I came into the house and I was in a bad mood. And then something happened. I think one of my slippers was missing. And then one of the teenage daughters said something that everybody in the room was thinking, but she's the one who always says it. And I don't know, my mood progressively soured. And at a certain point, I had a temper tantrum. I had a full-blown all-American temper tantrum. And then with doors slamming and yelling, and all of a sudden one of the kids started doing homework, and the other one got into bed, the other one was flossing. All the activities started. All right, and then it was shortly before Mariv, so at about 5 to 10, I had to go to Mariv. So I walk out of the house. This is right after the temper tantrum. And as I walk out of the house, I go David Mariv, a nice kavonadik in Mariv. I come home after Mariv. My wife is sitting on the couch, and I could tell she's trying to suppress a smile. So I wasn't, and the kids are, everybody's house is still quiet. And I just looked at her, and I said, "What's so funny?" She goes, "Well, after you stormed out of the house, Plony, our 10-year-old son at the time, said, after you stormed out of the house, Plony looked at me and he said, and he writes about Chinuch." So those are the qualifications. The qualifications that in Chinuch that I am a parent, like all parents who have gone through the trenches in Chinuch. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't give us a chance to learn the game. It's like skydiving, right? If at first you don't succeed, skydiving is not for you. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not give us much of a chance to make the mistakes, or maybe that is Chinuch itself. That's as far as Chinuch of children. As far as Chinuch as far as outreach, I've been involved at Or Sameach for about 30 years, and they still haven't made a Baal Tshuva out of me. But I've hopefully we try to introduce other people. And the bottom line between Chinuch and Kiruv is that Chinuch is, I rarely use the word Kiruv, even when educating the uninitiated, because I always feel that it's a question of education. Both are a question of education. There are different ways of educating people. One of the ways is some of the people need to be educated are the people who have not had the opportunity to be exposed to the beauty of Torah, and then there are the people who have had the opportunity and need more education, whether it's Gemara learning or Chumash scholarly education. Then you have the people who have what they call FFBs, which everybody assumes means from birth, but then again FFBs sometimes means fractured from birth. And therefore the job, the Chinuch and Kiruv connection is going to be very much similar. So what I say is going to involve both areas. There's a man came from Eretz Yisrael, man came from Eretz Yisrael collecting in the United States. So he walks into a very wealthy man, and he says to him, I have 12 children. I have to marry them off. Can you help me out? So this wealthy man gives him an earful. Says, "Listen, I don't approve of your lifestyle, and I don't approve of people asking for money. And anyway, you have 12 children. They're your responsibility. You brought them into the world. You'll have to take. I'll give you $18, but that's it." So the guy says to him, "Can I ask you a question?" He says, "Yeah." He says, what would your reaction be if you were offered a partnership with Warren Buffett? He wants to take you in as a partner. What would your reaction be? So the guy says to him, listen, that'd be very, I would grab at it. He says, why? He says, listen, if I became a partner with Warren Buffett, there were immediate benefits, and it would be very, very prestigious, and then people would invest with me, and it would give me credibility, and so on and so forth. So the guy says, the Gemara says there are three partners in every child. There's a father, there's a mother, there's a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Kodesh Baruch Hu has been our partner 12 times. Don't you think that's more impressive than Warren Buffett? So I would love to tell you that the story ends with the guy writing him out a check for $300,000. That part I don't know. The guy might have said, well, that's a great story, you mechutz, get out. That also might happen. I'm not sure how the story ends. The point is that he's absolutely right, that a person has to understand that we have a shutfus with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is our partner. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is our partner not only in our biological children. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a partner in all of the children who are out there who we're trying to reach and trying to affect in some way. And therefore, a person has to know that we have a certain achrayus, and people have to be reached. That's an achrayus in Klal Yisrael. I had a Talmud once who told me, I asked him once how he started out. This was a bocher who was came from a frum home, and he told me that he was sitting on his bed, and he was eating. It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and he was in a yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael that is really catering to boys who are struggling. And he was sitting on his bed at 5 in the afternoon smoking a cigarette and eating some potato chips, drinking a Coke. And all of a sudden the door opens and the mashgiach walks in. The mashgiach is wearing a kittel and a talis. And he says to him, Tzadikal, today we don't eat. Right now it's Kol Nidre, it's Yom Kippur, we don't eat now. The bocher was not aware that it was Yom Kippur. He didn't know it was Yom Kippur. He didn't know when Rosh Hashanah had come and gone. His schedule at that time in his life was to spend the nights on the beach and in clubs, and all day long he slept. So he had no idea, as a bocher from home, he had absolutely no idea that Rosh Hashanah had come and gone. He had no idea it was Yom Kippur. The bocher today is married and learning a kollel, has a family. So there's nobody who we can't reach. There's nobody who we can ever say we give up hope on. There was a Rav somewhere in New York, and he was living in some sort of big apartment complex, and a young lady, an African American, comes over to him and she says to him, "You're a rabbi, aren't you?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Can I ask you a favor? Can you check my mezuzah?" So he looks at her, he goes, "Are you Jewish?" She goes, No, I'm not Jewish, but I have a lot of Jewish friends, and they said that if you put this here mezuzah on your door, it'll protect you. So I bought one of these mezuzahs and I put it on the door, but they also said that it has to be checked a couple of times every 7 years. And so I noticed, "You're a rabbi, can you check my mezuzah?" So he says, "Figures, okay, interesting." Okay, so he goes up to her apartment, right sure on the front door, he's got a nice mezuzah, and he takes a screwdriver and he unscrews it, and he takes a look inside, there's nothing inside, there's no parchment. And he says to her, "When you bought this mezuzah, was there something inside?" She goes, "Yeah, but I couldn't read them instructions, so I threw them away." So it's unfortunate that in our generation, a lot of people have kept the outer trappings of Judaism, they've thrown away the instruction manual. And our job becomes that we have to try as best we can to reach everybody, and we give up on no one. Chazal say there are many different ways of teaching. If we teach Torah, so Chazal say, Kol amalamed ben amor etz Torah afilu HaKadosh Baruch Hu gozer gzeira mevatla bishvilo. If you teach a ben amor etz Torah, a ben amor, it's somebody whose parents didn't teach him, somebody who knows nothing. If you teach him Torah, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a gzeira, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mevatla the gzeira for the person who has taught Torah to the ben amoretz. There are many different ways of teaching Torah. But the realization of what we're doing when we're reaching out, that a person who teaches Torah to the son of an amoretz, to the uninitiated, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes gzeira. Are we always asking, what can we do? There's this gzeira, that gzeira, the other gzeira. I think Rav Baron knows, and anybody who comes from Eretz Yisrael knows very well. When you come to America, people always walk over to you. As soon as you get off the plane, so what's the matzav in Eretz Yisrael? Right? Everybody wants to, first of all, you probably know better if you have Fox News. You know better than we do. Number one, you probably get the truth. But the concern for Gzeiras in Eretz Yisrael, the concern for what Jews are going through in America, concern for all the anti-Semitism. Gzeiras. How many mevatla Gzeira? Kol malamed ben amor etz Torah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu mevatla Gzeira bishvilo. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could be mevatla Gzeira for somebody who's taught Torah and somebody who doesn't know. Number one. Number two, a person who teaches Torah says, "Malamed Torah l'amo Yisrael." HaKadosh Baruch Hu teaches Torah to Klal Yisrael. If you teach Torah to somebody who doesn't know, you are being mekayim the mitzvah of the halachta b'drachav. You are being mekayim that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu teaches Torah, we teach Torah. It's a mekayim of the mitzvah of halachta b'drachav. Mahu rachum. Just like Baruch Hu is a rachum, I have to tell you rachum, and the greater rachmanis. Oives habrios ubekorvan la Torah. If you really love people, the best thing you do is mekarv them to Torah. Not only Torah, a whole Torah lifestyle. I had a teacher in high school. One of the young ladies here heard me tell this story in Israel recently, and the story itself bears. I had a teacher in high school. We didn't like him. He didn't like us. He was a crude, coarse ex-Marine with a tattoo. We were terrified of him. It was the only class we behaved in. Didn't make a peep. And he had a very annoying habit. First of all, when he spoke to us, he would lecture us by waving his glasses at us. It's very humiliating to have somebody talk to you with their glasses. He would poke the glasses at us. Number two, he had a habit that periodically at the end of a sentence, he would repeat the last word of the sentence, because he felt that that made him look sophisticated. And all it did was, it annoyed us. So one day in I have a pretty vivid imagination. I could not make this up if I wanted to. I was sitting in the front row of the class, and he was handing back our test papers. And as he handed back our test papers, and he was kind of rough. He had this rough, coarse way of speaking. And he's waving his glasses at us, and he hands back our test paper. He says to us, "Gentlemen, the problem with your papers, there was too much repetition. Right? Now, yeah. And of course, I was sitting in the front row. Biting my lip off to avoid laughing. And it's something that's worth repeating. In both cases, both when it comes, I'm telling you the truth, honestly, and I didn't do well in that class. It is the most important lesson, probably the only lesson I learned that year in his class, probably the most important lesson I learned in high school. There are certain things in life that need repeating. So, in Chinuch and in Kiruv, whether it's dealing with our children or dealing with people on the outside, the bottom line is that it's the behavior of the person that is going to have the biggest effect, have the biggest impact on that person. When dealing with other people, it's almost never what we say, it's either how we behave or who it is that's saying it and how it's being said. It's rarely what we say that affects the person. The person who's having a conversation with you, do we really come from gorillas or not, right? Which is not even an issue in anybody's life anymore. But for example, people want to know about evolution, that sort of thing, which is rare nowadays. The answer isn't going to affect them. If they had an interaction, it was a positive interaction, and especially if they were sitting at your Shabbos table and the kugel was good and the cholent was good, you're probably going to see them again. If you prove to them without doubt that we do not come from apes, but you smeared them in the conversation, they're not going to come back again. It's not what you say, but let's talk about children first. Child was asked he was a little kid in a school, was asked to draw a picture of his family members. So, child draws this nice picture, little boy, about 8 years old, 9 years old. So he draws a picture of his mother, she's in the kitchen with an apron, draws a picture of his sister, she's running, draws a picture of his brother, he's running because he's the one chasing the sister. Right? He draws a picture of all his family members. And then he draws a picture, his father is sitting at a table with the Gemara open, and the windows are blackened, it's pitch dark outside, there's a big clock on the wall, and the clock is showing midnight. That's the image he has of his father. The image he has of his father is a man who at midnight, why the kid is up at midnight is a good question, but the kid at midnight gets up and he sees his father, and his father is learning. That's the impression. All the talk about the chashivus of Talmud Torah isn't going to have an effect on a child unless the child sees that the father himself is machshiv Torah. And the way a father is machshiv Torah is that a father is sitting and learning Torah. When a child comes home, true story, 6-year-old, boy, sorry, not 6-year-old, boy, 5th grade, 6th grade, comes home, says, "Mommy, we're making a siyum on Mishnayos." The mother says, "That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. You're making a siyum on Mishnayos." She immediately goes into the other room, she puts on her shaitel, she sets the table with all sorts of nashi, cookies, all sorts of stuff. She says, "Just wait for when your father comes home. We're all going to sit down. We're going to have a siyum together." That a kid appreciates. This kid is machshiv. He understands his mother is machshiv Torah. If a mother says, "Well, that's wonderful. Siyum is great. Now get your mishnayos off the table. I don't want the living room to look like a mess." So then he's absorbed another lesson. The mishnayos are good, but the living room table is more important. And therefore, if what the parents do in the home, the effect on the child in chinuch is definitely going to be, and we all know that, anybody who's been a parent for any great length of time, like about 10 minutes, knows that that is what affects the children. Children don't do as we say, children do as we do. If a father has a daf yomi shir, and the kids see him draying around in the house, wait till he goes and he drays around and he's on his phone and he's waiting till he goes and he comes back and says, boy, that was boring, or whatever it is, that's a message that the child's going to absorb it wordlessly, without any effort. A mother, the women of Klal Yisrael, bless you all, women have taken on one responsibility in the home. It's an interesting responsibility. The ladies have taken on the responsibility of benching. They are on the bench patrol. So somebody, Chaim, did you bench? Shmuel, did you bench? Yankee, did you bench? Yitzi, did you bench? Somehow the mothers have taken on that. Maybe it's because, she's the one making the food, so she wants to see somebody, did they really eat? The sign is if they benched or not. I'm not sure. Yankee, did you bench? Shmuel, did you bench? Mommy, I didn't eat bread. That's okay. Bench anyway. You didn't bench yesterday. I bench. So mommy's always benching. Ladies, with all due respect, I mean, you're great. There's nobody like a mother in Klal Yisrael. Did you ever watch yourself bench? When a mother benches, what it usually looks like? That's usually how the mother benches. And then sometimes, Uvenei Yerushalayim ira kodesh b'mheira v'yameinu. Uvenei Yerushalayim ira kodesh b'mheira v'yameinu. Right? So then the next day she says, Chaim, did you bench? I can't bench. Why not? I don't have a cell phone. How could I bench? Because that's what he thinks. That's what he thinks. That's how you bench with a cell phone. So you understand what you're doing in the home. The kids are seeing it, and unfortunately they're seeing it. Fortunately, unfortunately, that is what's going to have the major effect in the home. I think that there was a habit they used to have. There are some people who, when a child says a bad word, so, there are those who wash the mouth out with soap, right? They wash a child's mouth out. This was something that was done in the time of the Inquisition. And there are those who have a policy that they wash a child's mouth out with soap for saying a bad word. Now, I want to tell you two things about that. First of all, if you wash out a child's mouth, a child comes in, he says something, and the mothers often just lose it. Like, how can you say that? It's a very big mistake, because then the child knows which button to push. So the next time you're alone in the house with the kids, the husband's not home, the mom may say, okay, everybody brush your teeth, get into bed. The kid looks at you, no, and he says the word, and he knows exactly which button. That's a mistake, number one. Number two, if you overreact, you've reinforced it. You say something like, a mensch doesn't talk like that. I can't, a mensch doesn't say things like that. But more importantly, what the child has learned, let's say you do wash his mouth out with soap. All the child has learned is, don't say bad words around adults with soap. That's what the child has learned, right? If he's not around adults with soap, he's safe. But you wash it out. I got a much better idea, ladies. You won't do this, but it would work. This would be unbelievable. Erev Shabbos. Imagine it's Erev Shabbos. You got a house full of guests that are coming. One of them is your mother-in-law, so you're under a lot of pressure. And 20 minutes before Shabbos, all of a sudden, you're running around doing 17 different things. Why the number 17? I don't know. That was a number my mother always used. For some reason, my wife uses that. There's always 17. I don't know how the women got to 17. I only do 17 different things. I don't know where the number is. Parenthetical. So it's Erev Shabbos, 20 minutes before Shabbos, and all of a sudden you're running around, and all of a sudden, oh no, and you smell the chicken burning. And you go running into the kitchen, and you turn off the oven, and you open it up, and now the chicken, sure enough, the chicken has got too crisp. Chicken is burnt, and you haven't got enough time to start making new chicken before Shabbos. What's your reaction at that moment? So if you just break into the Uncle Moshe son, Gamzula Tova, right? Okay, so you're a very special person. But if more likely, plus you've been listening to the tapes, if you're more likely that you say something, it doesn't have to be horrible, but you actually let one go, which is a little less refined than you normally are. You know what you should do at that moment? You want to be mechanech your children? Call all your children into the living room. Doesn't have to be done then. It can be Motzei Shabbos too. Call them all in and say, guys, I just want to tell you something. Erev Shabbos, I said a not nice word. Watch this. Then wash your own mouth out with soap. You won't do it, will you? But it'll have much more of an effect. You know why? The kids will talk about it for months. Mommy washed her mouth out with soap. Right? They'll be talking about it so much. You have to be careful here, because then the neighbors may hear about it. Your little child in school, your little chumi will tell her friend Racheli, and Racheli will tell her parents, and you're going to find an anonymous box outside your front door with a note, with sorry, we didn't realize you can't afford toothpaste. I have a big box of toothpaste out there. Love the neighbors. So what you have to be careful. The point is that when you demonstrate it and you do it, and the more you do it, the more your children are going to see that's the effect of, that's what real chinuch is. Real chinuch is affecting through our actions. There's a remarkable phenomenon you find in the Torah. Avram Avinu, take a look in Sefer Bereshis. You always find Avram Avinu talking to people. He speaks to Sarah, and he speaks to Paro, and he speaks to Lot, he speaks to Avimelech. Avram Avinu is always talking to people. There's one person in Sefer Bereshis who Avram Avinu is conspicuously, there is no conversation. Do you know who that is? It's his own son, Yitzchak. You will never find a conversation between Avram and Yitzchak except for one place. There's only one place where we find Avram talking to Yitzchak. You know where that is? When he's about to shech him. Right? That's the only time he talks to him. The rest of the time, you never find ever a conversation between Avram and Yitzchak. You think that maybe he spoke to Yitzchak? There are midrashim that said they learned in yeshiva together. They were chavrusas. He was this Rebbe. He taught him. Yitzchak was the first FFB in history. And Avram and Sarah, a from for birth. Avram and Sarah invested all their kishkes into Yitzchak. Elamai, the Torah is teaching us in the conspicuous absence of any conversation, that when was it that, what was the chinuch of an Avram Avinu to Yitzchak Avinu? The chinuch was Avram Avinu's actions, not his speaking. Avram Avinu's chinuch was through what he did, not through what he said. The Torah does not record a conversation, number one. Number two, you know when he does speak to him? And each time he speaks to him, he says, Bini. Bini, it's a term of endearment, a term of affection. The father shows affection to his son. That's the chinuch. Both of these principles apply when we're dealing with Jewish outreach. When it comes to Jewish outreach, there are two things that we need. Number one, we have to teach through our actions. And number two, it has to be that they feel we care about them. Bini, we care about, or biti, in your case, Bini, that we care about them as people. Not about their neshama, we care about them as people. Those two are constants that apply, both when it comes to family and when it comes to Jewish outreach. I'm from Chicago. Probably none of you guessed based on the lack of accent. There have actually been studies done, by the way, that have shown that the Midwest American accent is the most correct form of spoken English. The studies were done in the Midwest of the United States. And it's rare that I could come to look at a room full of people and say, yes, we are the world champions in baseball. You know, this has not happened in the last 108 years, which is the gematria of Cub, right? Kuf Vav Beis, right? Which the significance, which is absolutely insignificant, but that's certainly something we were speaking about. In any event, Wrigley Field in Chicago, a lot of frum guys vend at Wrigley Field. Vendors are vendors in Wrigley Field. There's a Lakewood Kollel in Chicago, and one day a young man, totally secular, fry as an egg, as the expression goes, showed up at the Lakewood Kollel in Chicago. He walks over to one of the Rosh Kollel, says, "Hi, I'm Jewish. I heard there are Torah classes here." Kollel said, "It's a Kollel." But he sat down, talked to the young man, find out about his background, get him plugged in. Said to him, "I'm curious, you're Jewish. How did you hear about us? How did you happen to end up here?" So he says, "You know what? I'm completely secular, but I'm a vendor at Wrigley Field. And I see there are these religious guys at Wrigley Field who are vendors. And I notice that every game, after about the sixth inning, regardless of what's going on, they get together, about 10 or 12 of them stand together, and they pray. And I realize these guys are playing for keeps. If you've never vended, I was a vendor for a little while also. When you're vending, there's money to be made. It is so compelling that I thought the first time I went to vend, I thought this is going to be great. I could make money and watch a ball game, right? It'd be great. The ball game didn't interest me. Isn't that interesting? When I was vending, very little interest in the ball game. When people are throwing money at you, all of a sudden the ball game is trivial compared to the money. He says to the guy, if guys could stop vending, to take time out, to devote themselves and to pray, that got me very curious. But the cherry on top was that one day one of the guys was given, he sold somebody a Coke, and the guy paid, and he gave him change. The guy paid him, and I noticed that when the guy paid him, instead of giving him a $5 bill, he gave him a $100 bill. And that religious kid gave him change. He said, "Sir, you made a mistake. You gave me $100." He didn't know he gave him the $100 bill. If you know anything about vendors, most vendors, like 99.99%, would not do that. He said, if that's what Judaism teaches, I'm interested. I asked them where I could find out. They sent me to here, so here I am. Please teach me. the person's actions, what a person does. Now in Chicago, by the way, in Wrigley Field, it was a problem getting a minyan in Wrigley Field because the halacha is you're not allowed to daven for a nace, you're not allowed to daven for a miracle, right? But nowadays I guess that's behind us, right? Or either that or they were davening for a quick death. I'm not sure what it was, so, they should go down quickly. In Eretz Yisrael, there was a young man was learning in a yeshiva, and he was completely disinterested. The Bacher was learning in a yeshiva. He had no interest. I'm just showing you the difference between those who are connected, those who were once connected. Bacher was learning in yeshiva, and he lost interest. And he came to the Rosh Yeshiva and said, Rebbe, I'm leaving the yeshiva. I don't want to be, this is not for me, being a Ben Torah. It's too restricting, and too this, too that, too the other. And he left the yeshiva. About a week and a half later, he resurfaces, comes into the yeshiva, he sits down in the base medrash, he sits down with his Gemara, starts learning like a house on fire. Doesn't move. The yeshiva's watching him, he doesn't want to interrupt him. He sees the guy, the entire Seder doesn't move. Comes back the next day, and again, he's sitting and learning. By the third day, the Rosh Yeshiva is already, what's totzach? So he walks over and says, Yitzchak, what happened to you? I came in, you told me a week and a half ago, you said you're totally disinterested. You're learning like you've never learned before. What's going on? He says, Rebbe, I tell you, I was really disinterested. And I was wandering around. I was driving around. We went to Tel Aviv. We went to Netanya. We came back. I was in Yerushalayim. And I was walking through the streets of Geula. And all of a sudden, I heard a commotion. I heard a tumult. I heard somebody yelling. And I noticed there was a seminary girl, and she was yelling at a cab driver. Apparently, the cab driver overcharged her. She thought she overcharged her. And she threw some money down on the seat of the cab, and she slammed the car door shut. And he took off, but her skirt, she was wearing some sort of wraparound thing that got caught in the door. And he left her in a very compromised position. It's one of those moments in life you're just frozen, you don't know what to do. And I'm standing there, I felt it was horrific. And all of a sudden I saw two yeshiva bachrim come running towards her. They took off their jackets. Without looking at her, they ran over, threw their jackets on her, turned around and ran off in the other direction. I said, if that's how B'nai Torah behave, I am going to become a Ben Torah. Rebbe, I'm here. I'm never going to leave. That is the behavior. A person who demonstrates through the behavior, that is all we have available to us. It's not all we have. It is the most important thing that we have in order to impress, outreach other people. Before I was learning in Kollel, my wife had a friend who became a Balas Tshuva. And this young lady was almost your stereotypical Balas Tshuva. I just remember she came to the house, and she was very robotic. And she even pulled out her composition book at the Shabbos table to say Dvar Torah. It just very, very, very stiff, very awkward. And almost like rah-rah Yiddishkeit. And eventually, one day she brought her sister back. Now, her sister was a feminist, anti-religious, left feminist. Her sister actually said to me, if you want to hear a Pella, her sister, you've read the book, The Tzaddik in Our Time, right? Have you heard of The Tzaddik in Our Time? Her sister said to me, this is just to get us started off, she said, I read the book, Tzaddik in Our Time. I said, yeah, what'd you think of it? She said, I think he's one of the most selfish people I ever read about. I said, really? She goes, how so? And it's amazing how distorted people can be. I said, how so? She goes, well, you believe that every time you do a good deed, you get reward, don't you? I said, yeah. I said, well, he did a lot of good deeds because he wanted the reward, so he's very selfish. And there are certain things that takes a lot to get me speechless. I was speechless. I don't remember what I said. I remember what I should have said. One of them was I should have just hit her with my polky. That's what I should have done. I think it was we don't know his motivation. And what I really should have said was, yeah, you're absolutely right. Why don't you try it? Try being selfish like him, man. Let's see how selfish you can be. You too can be selfish. That's right. The sequel to The Tzaddik in Our Time. Now you too can be selfish. And I just remember that things were very choppy. I don't remember she was the one, but I'm pretty sure because when she told me she was a vegetarian, I remember it was, I don't remember if it was her or somebody else, a young lady said she was a vegetarian, and I just innocently asked, well, do you eat fish? And she said, if it has a heartbeat, I don't eat it. I said, we don't either. We kill it first. Right? And so I think it was just, so we got along well. We were getting along. And at a certain point, and I was in Kollel at the time, and she asked me a question about Yiddishkeit. I didn't nothing too articulate, nothing too fancy. She asked me a question. I started answering her. Right in front, I'm sitting there with my wife and her sister, just to show you how tactless she was. Right in front of us, she turns to her sister, and she says, why does he sound like he knows what he's talking about, and you sound like a tape recorder? And the answer is, The answer was because her sister sounded exactly like a tape recorder. She sounded like a tape recorder. She really, except that it was without an off switch. But she sounded exactly like a tape recorder. If you're going to reach somebody, you can't say over something because somebody said something and it sounded good. One of the best expressions is, I don't really know. Let's have some more chont. That works wonders, right? I don't really know. Let's investigate it together. But to present it and to jam it down their throat, that never works. A person who comes across as a good, I'm sure you've all had guests at your homes for Shabbos, and you've had guests that have come to your home. And I want to tell you a story. I was going to tell you this about, say, Shabbos. What's today? Today's Friday. I'm a little bit mixed up. Came from Eretz Yisrael yesterday. Jet lag. That's always a good one. I'm jet lagged. Jet lag is much better than saying, oh, I have a headache. Right? Nobody feels like jet lag. Ooh, jet lag. There's always certain respect for jet lag. So what is today? Today is Thursday. And my clock is off too. In any event, sorry. Oh, you are listening. Okay. Repetition. A woman came to me after a talk in Eretz Yisrael once, and she said to me that she had been making Shabboses, for years, like many of you, I'm sure probably all of you. She always had a big Shabbos table. She had friends and a guest and a friend of a friend, and she had all these people at her Shabbos table. And she was in her mid-60s, which is remarkably, incredibly young, and she was in her mid-60s. And she decided to pass the torch to the next generation. But, she and her husband are going to start having quiet Shabbosim now and let everybody else, do the guesting. All right. In the meantime, Or Sameach was having a Shabbaton. There's a little town called Telstone, right outside Yerushalayim. Little place called Telstone. So Or Sameach has a Shabbaton. And the rabbi who was organizing it, Thursday night, this woman is sitting for the first time in years. She's reading a magazine. Probably Hamodia, the column on Chinuch, and what not to do. And she was sitting there reading her magazine, and Thursday night she decided this was going to be her quiet Shabbos, she and her husband, and all of a sudden the phone rings, that ominous ring. Sometimes there's a ring, I know what that ring is. And sure enough, it was one of my colleagues at Or Sameach, the Beis Medrash boys. The boys have been there already from. They're going to Telstone for Shabbos because you have 2 boys for Shabbos. So this woman says, all right, we'll go into retirement next Shabbos. Okay, we'll make it next Shabbos. Okay, so she's sitting there, and she gets up, starts cooking for Shabbos. Friday, 2 o'clock, knock on the door. The Rav arrives with the 2 Bochrim, come in, black hats, jackets from boys. They come in, and one of the Bochrim looks around. He says, this is the house. This is the house. This is the house. So he says, what's your problem? He says, this is the house. I'm telling you, this is the house. I said, what's your... He says, I got to Israel 3 years ago. And I remember when I was in Israel 3 years ago, I was completely secular, completely fry. And we did this weekend, the Shabbos weekend, and it was some small town outside Jerusalem. And I never knew the name of it. I never found out the name. And I remember I went to this is the town. It was Tulsa, and I never remembered. And we went to this family's house for Shabbos. I was sitting at the Shabbos table. It was so beautiful. I decided then and there that I'm going to stay in Yeshiva and become religious. This was the house. This was the house. The woman said to me she dropped her retirement plans. So ladies, you have your guests. Sometimes, Shabbos, how successful was Shabbos? All right, maybe the challahs didn't float like the Anonei HaKovod like they normally do, and maybe your husband's Dvar Torah would have been excellent if he would have just gotten the Parsha right, and what do you call it? And it just was, the conversation was a little bit stiff, a little bit still. It just wasn't quite what you wanted it to be. At the end of the day, you had somebody there. You don't know what in effect. You're sitting there at your Shabbos table. We take this for granted. You could have a college girl who's sitting at your house who's being used and abused on a college campus, and she's sitting there looking at what's going on. She's saying, I don't know what this is about, but this is what I want. There's a husband who seems to be mechabed his wife. There's a couple here who seems to get along. There are children here, 16-year-olds. Are they home? They should be out doing drugs like my little brother. That's what they're doing. What are they doing around the table? There's a 17-year-old girl who's here instead of running around who knows Hefker. This is what I want. That's the effect that it has. The actions, we think people don't notice. People are noticing. That's the hashpah when it comes to Kiruv. Chazal say, I don't know what time it is, it's almost luchbenching. That's always the line. That's just a line from home. My wife always, it's almost luchbenching. We got 6.5 hours in 3 days till luchbenching. No, it's almost luchbenching. Listen, I can say what I want. My wife is 6,000 miles away right now. I get away with murder right now. She actually told me once, just a chinuch, I was once preparing my Gemara Shir, the daily Gemara Shir. I don't know why I'm telling you this. I'm jet lagged. I was preparing my daily Gemara Shir, And at a certain point, I walked into the kitchen and I said to my wife, you have no idea how much pressure it is to prepare a Gemara shiur. You don't learn Gemara. You don't know what it's like coming up with a shiur every day. You don't know what it's like. I gave her a good drasha, and as usual, she just ignored me. And in the middle of my drasha, the lights went out. The blackout in the house. So I go out into the hallway, and the box, I'm fiddling with buttons up, down, nothing. Right, nothing. After about 2 minutes, she comes walking out. She looks right past me. There's a little button. It wasn't there 30 seconds earlier. A little button. She flips the button, and all the lights go on. That's bad. That's bad. Well, the lights go on when a wife does that to husband. That's bad. And I'm just looking there. I have, again, speechless. And she looks at me. She goes, would you like help preparing your shiur, Rabbi Kaplan? And she walks off into the sunset. So, there's a little payback do-over here. In any event, Chazal say, ten lo mishalo she'ata v'sholcho shelo. Ten lo mishalo she'ata v'sholcho shelo. Give him, I know they made it into a song, but the Chazals came before the songs. And ten lo mishalo means there isn't a person in this room who doesn't have a talent, an ability, a capability to be able to affect other Jews. It could be teaching Torah, it could be organizational skills, it could be communication skills, it could be fundraising. It doesn't matter what it is. The bottom line is that we have an achrayus to do whatever we're able to do in order to reach out to other people. There isn't a person in this room who's potter. There isn't a person in the room who say, I can't. You're not able to speak to people publicly, speak to them privately. You're not able to fundraise, nobody says you have to. But potter below klum, none of us are potter below klum. It has to be done properly. It has to be done within the framework exactly how the Torah wants us to do it. But no one is able to turn around and say, I am absolved from my responsibility to try to reach out to other Jews. Finally, anytime I say finally, it just means, okay, everybody start paying attention again. I was once at a talk where the speaker said finally, how everybody sits up, and everybody sits up and just kind of, makes as if they were listening the entire time. And he said finally, and we all sat up, and he said finally, and he said finally 4 times. And eventually he said finally, finally. So then he brought it in for a landing. Finally, we live in a society that's making a lot of noise. And I don't mean the noise down the hall with the food. I mean a society that makes noise. At the Egel, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu said he hears the noise of the people. By the Egel, the Chet Egel, where Klal Yisrael did the biggest Avera, Moshe Rabbeinu says he heard the noise of the people. Why was there so much noise at the Egel? Why are people making noise? It wasn't the noise of battle, it wasn't the noise of defeat, of victory. Why was there so much noise at the Chet Egel? Because at the Chet Egel, when you're trying to get involved in something you shouldn't be doing, your rational thought is drowned out in the noise. When we present Torah, we present it b'nachas u'v'ni'imus. We present it pleasantly, we present it sweetly. That's what's absorbed. Through our actions, through our speech, we present it nicely, we present it pleasantly. That's what people are going to absorb, that's what people are going to remember. It's something that we all have the ability to do. Again, I emphasize it has to be done properly within the framework of Torah, the way Torah expects us to do it. But the same chinuch that we give our children, the same example that we set in the home, that's the example that we have to set on the street. That's the example we have to set in business. That's the example. She'eh Shem Shamayim, Shem Hashem misohev al yodcha. That you should cause through your actions that Hashem's name becomes beloved. That more than anything else has the effect on those who we're trying to affect. The Kodesh Baruch Hu should help us all, that we should show them what lies in store. And I just want to add one thing. He gave me the 1-minute signal, but that was 3 minutes ago, so I'm anyway over, so I'll just keep on going over. One last point, very important. Our emphasis is to show people not what happens if you learn Torah and you become from what you're going to get in Olam Haba. Show people, look at the beauty of Olam Haza. Look at the beauty of a Torah family. Look at the beauty of a Shabbos. Look at the beauty of everything that we have here. If we're successful in showing that beauty, Mimela, they'll have all of the schar in Olam Haba. But they have to feel that this a beautiful Torah, it's a beautiful Yiddishkeit. That's our job, because Baruch Hu should give us all the siyata d'shmaya, that we should be successful in all of our efforts. Outward kiruv, inward kiruv, and kiruv on ourselves. Shabbos.